Welcome to Daybreak with Ted Tibbett and Michael Paul. If you have a comment, you can call us now at 261-0898 or pound 981 on any C Spire device. Our email is newsradiomornings@gmail.com.
Summer breeze. It won't be too very long. 7:16 now, 16 minutes after 7 o'clock. And we're very honored to be joined by Congressman Michael Guest. Good morning, Congressman.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Thank you and Ted both for visiting with me today.
Hey, look, we're glad to be here. The studio audience is excited. We don't get to talk to you as often as we do Congressman Ezell, but he joins us every Wednesday, and we talked to him yesterday, by the way. He had a lot to say about what's going on in Washington, and I know you guys have very similar opinions. But, we've got a border in crisis. We saw the president last week and the impeached Secretary Mayorkas with him. Tonight, he's going to give the State of the Union address to a joint session of Congress. He invited folks there that politely declined. What's your take on this? He says or at least we anticipate that he's going to tout historic achievements. Do you know what those are? And if you do, could you explain it to us?
I don't know what he's going to be able to tell us that he's done over his 3 years that have made the lives of everyday Americans better. You talked about just a second ago the border crisis, and I think that has to be the thing that the president addresses tonight, is he has to lay forth his plan to the American people as to what he and his administration are going to do to really correct the crisis that he created. I mean, if we remember back, Michael, when the president took office, he inherited one of the safest borders in modern U.S. history. The number of encounters that we were seeing under President Trump, those numbers were minuscule in numbers compared to what we're seeing today. And we know his first week in office, he began to roll back the very successful Trump-era policies, remain in Mexico. He allowed Title 42 to expire. He stopped wall construction. He ordered that more immigrants be released instead of detained and returned back to their country of origin. And those decisions have continued under him, under his leadership, and under the leadership of Secretary Mayorkas, to the point now where in many parts of the Southwest, they, on any given day, will see tens of thousands of individuals flow across. In December, total nationwide encounters, just for a single month, Michael, were over 370,000 encounters for the month of December alone.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that we have these numbers of people coming across our border. And of course, what we can't ignore are the crimes that are being committed by these illegals. And we see every day a new instance of someone being killed by a drunk illegal alien driver, by a rapist who killed that young lady in Georgia, the 14-year-old that was raped. Every single day. This has got to be the worst situation that the United States could ever find itself in. And the one simple thing that I always ask, I've asked you before, I've asked Congressman Ezell and others, is that why doesn't Joe Biden stop this? Because he has the power to stop it right now.
You're exactly right. He does have the power. He has the same power that President Trump had when he was in office. And President Biden refuses to act upon that. The House actually passed H.R. 2, a legislation that would have given him additional authority. It would have mandated wall construction. It would have added additional detention beds, given additional Border Patrol agents to deal with the crisis. The House passed that bill last spring, and that bill sits in the Senate, and Chuck Schumer refuses to take that bill up. And you're right, we see every day a new story about a violent crime being committed by an illegal immigrant. You mentioned the state trooper in Washington State who was killed by a drunk driver. Laken Riley, the nursing student in Georgia, who was killed. The case in Kenner, Louisiana, where you had the 14-year-old young lady who was raped and stabbed and robbed by an illegal alien. And then, we remember late January, early February, the video of the police officers in New York being beaten by a gang of illegal aliens. And look, every one of those crimes was preventable if we would not have allowed those individuals into the country. And so we could have prevented those crimes and so many more. Any crime committed by an illegal alien is a preventable crime. And it's preventable because they should not be allowed in the country. And this is what the president has gotten wrong. The president has created a crime crisis by an open southern border policy. He has created a public health crisis as it relates to overdose deaths in the United States that are the result of fentanyl. And, the leading cause of death, Michael, for individuals 18 to 45 in the United States are drug overdose. Most of those, if not the large majority, relate back to the consumption of fentanyl, which pours into the United States across our porous southern border. And he's also created, in many cases, a financial crisis for many of our urban areas as they are trying to deal with how they're going to house, feed, educate, and provide health care for the hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants streaming across the border every month.
I'll tell you, every single one of us, you probably are included in this, have a friend or acquaintance or family member that has been affected by this fentanyl crisis. I have two friends, actually, that lost children due to fentanyl. And I'm talking about these are kids in their 30s. And I say kids, heck, when you get to be 60 years old, 30 starts to look young. And you know the mistakes kids make. You go out and you want to get something and you buy it and you end up taking something that's poisoned that kills you. Of course, it's a bad mistake for a kid to do that, but they do dumb things when they're young. And so we could prevent so much of this just by simply closing the border.
You're exactly right. I can think of also two families that I know that have been impacted as a result of overdose death that relate back to the consumption of fentanyl. And it is affecting families in every community across the nation. And one of the reasons we're seeing the flow of these drugs into the country is because so much of our resources are being developed toward apprehending, processing, and then ultimately, in most cases, releasing immigrants into the interior where they then wait years to appear before an immigration judge to make their claims of asylum. The large majority of those claims, almost 90% of the claims of asylum that are adjudicated by our immigration courts are denied because someone coming to the United States just for a better life, for better economic opportunities, that is not a valid claim for asylum. And that is what we're seeing with a large number of the immigrants floating across. Our immigration court backlog right now, Michael, is 3 million cases. In many sectors, you're looking at people who are getting court dates 3, 4, 5 years down the road for their first initial appearance before an immigration judge. And so our border is not secure, regardless of what the president may say tonight when he delivers the State of the Union. The border is not secure. We have a broken immigration system, and we have a president who just for the second time in his political career, not just his career as the president, but in his entire political career as senator, vice president, and now president, he has only visited the border on 2 occasions, and one of those occasions was last week for nothing more than just a photo op.
Yeah. So there's a question that I have to ask you. There are reports out now, and I asked Congressman Ezell about this yesterday. I think Congress needs to take this bull by the horns, and here's what's going on. They are flying, apparently, from Mexico across the border in the air on flights approved by the United States to bring illegal immigrants into our country and deliver them safely to an airport inside the United States. Do you know about this? Do you believe that Congress needs to get involved in this?
I've heard those reports, not officially. I've seen the media reporting on that. I will tell you that I would not be surprised by that, particularly under this Secretary of Homeland Security. Secretary Mayorkas has done everything within his power to skirt congressional mandates. He is mandated to secure the border. He's mandated to detain and remove immigrants. He's mandated to make sure that individuals who are released into the United States, that those individuals are properly vetted before they are paroled. We've seen him use things such as the Mobile One app, where individuals are able to apply for asylum by an app, and then they show up at a certain time and they're allowed to cross the border. Now we see stories being reported that individuals, they're no longer being required to present themselves to the border. They just show up at an airport, and the federal government then pays for their flights to come into the country. And I can tell you that there would be legislation if this continues, that if this story is vetted and is true, that there will be legislation in the House to prohibit that. But the problem that we're going to run into is the Chuck Schumer-controlled Senate, who is going to do everything that they can to prevent pro-border security legislation from ever becoming law. And that's what's so frustrating. We're dealing with a Senate that is protecting the president, and we have a president who has no desire whatsoever to secure the border, other than he may become concerned that this is affecting his reelectability, because, we know that this is the number one issue that Americans are talking about right now coming into this presidential election in November.
You're just not a regular guy. You're a lawyer. You're a former prosecutor. When you see something like this, does it raise alarm bells to you that this is illegal, or is it not illegal? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it is clearly where we see someone who is at least circumventing the law. The law never intended for individuals to be flown into the country by our government to then come and seek asylum. The law has always been envisioned that people would present themselves at the border, and then at that point there would be proper vetting done, that there would be some sort of adjudication of are their claims of asylum valid or not, and that we would know who was coming into the country, but that most of those people would be turned back. The other thing that should be happening in every case is, these immigrants who are seeking to come to the United States, particularly those claiming asylum, they're not allowed by international law, Michael, to pass through a third country. And so if you're coming, say, from Venezuela, you're coming from Guatemala, you should then present yourself for asylum in the first country you come to. We know that in almost every case, people are coming through Mexico. Many of the people coming into the United States from our southern border, they're not residents of Mexico. We see people from all over the globe, people from China, people from the Middle East, people from Central and South America. They should be presenting themselves for asylum there in Mexico first. They're failing to do that. And I think that this is what the president can use, just as President Trump did, to tell Mexico, we're not going to allow these people in our country. We're going to remain in Mexico. If people want to claim asylum and they pass through any other country before coming here, they're going to have to remain in that country until their asylum claims are heard. And I guarantee you, if the President of the United States would just remain in Mexico, we would see a substantial decline in immigration within just a matter of a few days.
We're talking to Congressman Michael Guest from the 3rd District of Mississippi. We've got about 30 seconds left. I wanted to touch on this one question before we get out of here. This continuing resolution. So many people are upset with Congress and with the presidents and everybody else that you just continue to have these continuing resolutions. When is that going to stop?
I hope it stops next election cycle when we get a Republican president and a Republican Senate. You're exactly right. It is utterly ridiculous that we are now halfway through the budget year and we just now passed appropriations bills. We are 6 months into a 12-month cycle, and the appropriations bills are just now being passed. And so I agree with the frustrations myself, and I promise Mike they'll have the same frustrations. And we hope that if Republicans are elected in November, that we'll see a change to that process.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Congressman Michael Guest. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
And good morning, 7:30.